The photo that destroyed my life wasn't sent to me as a confession or a warning. It wasn't posted publicly for the world to see. It was buried in someone else's Instagram story, barely visible for 3 seconds before it disappeared, but those 3 seconds were enough to shatter everything I thought I knew about loyalty, friendship, and love. My name is Olivia Monroe, and this is the story of how my best friend since childhood and my boyfriend of 3 years stabbed me in the back at the same party I wasn't invited to. But more importantly, this is the story of how I walked away without a single scene, rebuilt myself into someone they could never touch, and delivered the most devastating revenge without ever raising my voice. Because sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to people who destroyed you is let them destroy themselves while you watch from a distance, thriving, glowing, untouchable. It started on a Friday night in October. One of those perfect autumn evenings where the air smells like possibility and everything feels like it's exactly where it should be. I was at home in my pajamas, eating leftover Chinese food and watching Netflix, perfectly content with my quiet night in. My boyfriend Marcus had told me he was working late on a project deadline. My best friend since we were 7 years old, Rachel, had said she wasn't feeling well and was staying home. I'd offered to bring her soup. She'd said no, she just needed rest. I'd sent her a sweet text telling her to feel better and that I loved her. She'd responded with a heart emoji. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. I had no idea that at that exact moment, both of them were together at a party thrown by Marcus's coworker, drinking, laughing, and doing things that would haunt me for months. I found out by complete accident. One of Marcus's coworkers, a guy named Derek who I'd met maybe twice, posted an Instagram story from the party. Just a casual video panning across the room showing people dancing and drinking. I almost scrolled past it. Almost. But something made me watch it again. And that's when I saw them. In the background, barely in frame for maybe 2 seconds. Marcus and Rachel. His arm around her waist. Her head on his shoulder. Both of them smiling in a way that wasn't friendly or casual or innocent. It was intimate, comfortable, like they'd done this 1,000 times before, like they belonged together. I watched that 2-second clip 17 times before my hands stopped shaking enough to screenshot it. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. This had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe they just ran into each other at the party. Maybe they were both surprised to be there and decided to hang out because they both knew me. Maybe that intimate body language was just the angle of the camera or my paranoia twisting something innocent into something sinister. But then I checked Rachel's location. We'd always shared locations with each other, one of those best friend things where you want to make sure the other person is safe. Her location showed she was at the exact address where the party was happening. The same party she'd told me she was too sick to attend. The same party Marcus had never mentioned. The same party I'd never been invited to. I sat on my couch, Chinese food forgotten, Netflix still playing to an empty room, and felt something inside me crack. Not break. Not shatter. Just crack. Like the first fracture in ice before the whole surface gives way. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone or punch a wall or do any of the dramatic things people do in movies when they discover betrayal. I just sat there in complete silence, watching that 2-second clip over and over, trying to find an explanation that didn't destroy me. I couldn't find one. I spent the entire night awake, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every interaction I'd had with both of them over the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Red flags I'd ignored. Moments that should have warned me. And once I started looking, I found them everywhere. The way Rachel always asked detailed questions about my relationship with Marcus. When we fought. What we fought about. Whether I thought we'd last. I'd thought she was being a supportive best friend, interested in my life, wanting to make sure I was happy. Now I realized she was gathering intelligence. Learning our weak spots. Finding vulnerabilities she could exploit. The way Marcus always seemed slightly too friendly with Rachel. How he'd laugh a little too hard at her jokes. How he'd hug her a little too long when we'd all hang out together. How he'd always suggest inviting her along when we made plans. I'd thought he was making an effort to bond with my best friend, being a good boyfriend who understood how important she was to me. Now I understood he'd been laying groundwork. The texts between them that I'd seen on Marcus's phone when he'd asked me to check something for him while he was driving. Messages that seemed innocent at the time, but now felt loaded with hidden meaning. Miss you, and can't wait to see you, and thinking about you with little inside jokes I didn't understand. I'd thought they were just becoming friends, building their own relationship separate from me. I'd been happy about it, proud that the two most important people in my life were getting along so well. I was an idiot, a complete, trusting, naive idiot, and they'd both played me perfectly. By the time the sun came up Saturday morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to demand explanations or cry or beg or give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I wasn't going to create drama or make scenes or force them to choose or pretend they were sorry. I was going to do something they'd never expect from sweet, loyal, forgiving Olivia. I was going to disappear. Not literally. Not in a dramatic run away and change my identity way. But emotionally, psychologically, I was going to remove myself from their lives so completely and so quietly that by the time they realized I was gone, I'd be so far ahead they could never catch up. Marcus texted me Saturday morning asking if I wanted to grab brunch. I responded with a simple "can't today, sorry."
No explanación. No excuse.
No suggestion to reschedule. Just a clean, polite decline. He didn't push. Didn't seem concerned. Probably relieved he didn't have to pretend to care. Rachel texted asking if I wanted to come over and watch movies since she was still feeling under the weather. I responded, hope you feel better soon, and nothing else. No offer to bring anything. No concern about her health. No plans to visit. Just empty words. She sent back a "thanks babe, love you" with kissing emojis.
I didn't respond.
That's when I knew for certain. Because the real Rachel, my actual best friend, would have noticed something was off. Would have called immediately asking if I was okay. Would have sensed the shift in my energy even through text messages. But this Rachel, the one who was sleeping with my boyfriend, was too distracted and too guilty to notice. Over the next week, I methodically distanced myself from both of them. When Marcus called, I let it go to voicemail and texted back hours later with vague excuses about being busy. When Rachel tried to make plans, I claimed I had work obligations or family stuff or just wasn't feeling social. I stopped initiating any contact. Stopped asking about their days. Stopped being available whenever they needed me. And you know what? Neither of them fought for me. Neither of them seemed confused or concerned about my sudden distance. They just accepted it. Probably grateful they didn't have to work as hard to hide their affair. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, someone you would have done absolutely anything for, someone you thought would never hurt you, hit that like button right now. Because you understand the specific kind of pain that comes from realizing the person you loved was never real. That everything you thought you knew was carefully constructed fiction. I started therapy the second week. Found a counselor named Dr. Patricia Morgan who specialized in betrayal trauma and toxic relationships. I walked into her office expecting to cry, to rage, to fall apart completely. Instead, I just felt numb, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me myself and left behind an empty shell going through the motions. Tell me what happened, Dr. Morgan said gently. So I did. I told her everything. The photo, the lies, the realization that two people I'd trusted more than anyone in the world had been betraying me together. The discovery that I'd been the joke they shared behind my back. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes or tell me everything would be okay or promise that time heals all wounds. Instead, she said something that changed everything. Olivia, you have two choices. You can let this destroy you, or you can let it remake you. You can spend years trying to understand why they did this, torturing yourself with questions that will never have satisfying answers. Or you can accept that some people are simply not capable of the loyalty and love you deserve, and use this pain as fuel to become someone they could never touch. I chose the second option. That afternoon, I went to the salon and cut my hair. Not a trim, a complete transformation. I'd had long blonde hair down to my waist since high school. Rachel used to braid it. Marcus used to run his fingers through it. I cut it into a sharp, edgy bob that barely touched my shoulders and dyed it a rich dark brown. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone new, someone stronger, someone who didn't belong to anyone's expectations anymore. Then I went to the gym and signed up for a membership. Not because I needed to lose weight or look better for anyone else, but because I needed to feel strong. I needed to prove to myself that my body could do hard things, that I could push through pain and come out better on the other side. I hired a personal trainer named Marcus. Yes, same name as my ex, which felt like fate giving me a chance to rewrite the narrative. This Marcus was professional, encouraging, and treated me with respect. Everything the other Marcus had never actually given me. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even me. I'd been coasting in my marketing job for 2 years, doing enough to get by, but never really pushing myself. Now I volunteered for every difficult project, stayed late, came in early, pitched ideas that were bold and creative, and sometimes failed spectacularly. But I learned from every failure, got better, got sharper, got more confident. 3 months after the party, my boss called me into her office. I thought I was in trouble for being too aggressive or overstepping somehow. Instead, she offered me a promotion. Senior marketing manager with a 30% salary increase and my own team. "Olivia, I don't know what changed in you over the past few months," she said, "but whatever it is, keep doing it. You've become invaluable to this company." I accepted the promotion and used my first paycheck to get my own apartment. I'd been living with 2 roommates in a cramped 3-bedroom where we were constantly on top of each other. Now I had a 1-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, a modern kitchen, and most importantly, space that was entirely mine. Space where no one could hurt me. Space where I could become whoever I wanted to be. During all of this, Marcus kept texting occasionally. "Hey stranger, haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay?" I'd respond with something vague and noncommittal. "Just busy with work." He never pushed harder, never actually asked to see me or suggested we talk about whatever was happening between us. Looking back, I realized he was already checked out, already fully invested in whatever he had with Rachel. He was just keeping me on the hook in case things with her didn't work out. Rachel was more persistent. She'd call crying about random problems, expecting me to drop everything and comfort her like I always had. But I didn't. I'd listen politely for a few minutes, then say I had to go. She'd text saying she missed me, and we needed to hang out soon. I'd agree in theory, but never actually make plans. She'd send memes and inside jokes trying to reconnect. I'd react with a simple emoji and nothing else. I was grieving the friendship we'd had, or thought we'd had, but I was doing it privately. In therapy, in journal entries, in long runs where I'd cry and sweat and push my body until the emotional pain turned physical and somehow more manageable. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I started to heal, not because time passed, but because I made the conscious choice every single day to move forward. To not check their social media, to not ask mutual friends about them, to not torture myself with comparisons or what-ifs or attempts to understand the ununderstandable. Dr. Morgan helped me see that closure doesn't come from other people. It comes from within. From accepting that you'll never fully understand why people who claim to love you chose to hurt you. From making peace with the fact that some questions don't have answers and some betrayals don't have explanations that will ever make sense. By month 4, I'd stop thinking about them every waking moment. By month 5, whole days would pass where I didn't think about them at all. By month 6, when I did think about them, it was with detachment rather than pain. They'd become characters in a story that happened to someone else. Not real, not relevant, not worth my energy. If you're still watching this, if you're invested in how this story ends, hit that subscribe button because what happens next is absolutely insane. I need you here for the moment when everything I built came face to face with everything I lost. Month 7 is when it all came crashing down. For them, not me. I was at a coffee shop near my new apartment, working on a presentation on my laptop, when the door opened and Rachel walked in. I didn't see her at first. I was too focused on my work, too comfortable in my new life where she didn't exist. But then I heard her voice. That familiar voice that used to mean safety and trust and home.
Now, it just sounded foreign.
She was ordering at the counter, and something in her tone made me look up. That's when I saw her. And even from across the room, even though I hadn't seen her in 7 months, I could tell something was very wrong. She looked terrible. Not in a shallow, she needs a makeover way, but in a broken, defeated, barely holding herself together way. Her hair was unwashed and pulled into a messy bun. Her clothes were wrinkled and ill-fitting. Her face was puffy, like she'd been crying for days. And her hand kept resting on her stomach in a gesture that was unmistakable. She was pregnant. I should have looked away. Should have packed up my laptop and left before she saw me. Should have protected the peace I'd spent 7 months building. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching this woman who used to be my best friend, who'd betrayed me in the worst possible way, who is now clearly suffering through her own nightmare. She got her coffee and turned toward the door. That's when our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other across a crowded coffee shop, like we were the only 2 people in the world. Then something in her face crumbled, and she started walking toward me. Every instinct I had screamed to run, to protect myself, to maintain the distance I'd worked so hard to create. But I stayed. Maybe because I needed to see this. Maybe because some part of me needed to know what happened after I left their story. Maybe because I was stronger now and knew I could handle whatever she was about to say. She stopped at my table, tears already streaming down her face. "Olivia," she whispered. "Oh God, Olivia." I didn't respond, just looked at her with the kind of neutral expression I'd perfected over 7 months of therapy and healing. "I know I don't have the right to talk to you," she continued, voice shaking. "I know I don't deserve a single second of your time after what I did. But please, I need to talk to you. I need help." I took a sip of my coffee, let the silence stretch out between us, let her squirm in the discomfort of her own guilt. Finally, I spoke. "Sit down." She collapsed into the chair across from me like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. Up close, she looked even worse. Dark circles under her eyes, chapped lips, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "I'm pregnant," she said, even though I'd already figured that out. 5 months. And Marcus. Her voice broke completely. She had to take several deep breaths before she could continue. "Marcus is gone. He left 2 weeks ago. Just packed his stuff and disappeared. Won't answer my calls. Blocked me on everything. His family won't tell me where he is. I'm completely alone. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, some kind of cruel joy at seeing karma deliver exactly what she deserved. But I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just emptiness where anger used to live. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry for what I did to you. You were my best friend. You were always there for me. And I destroyed that for a guy who turned out to be exactly the kind of person who abandons pregnant women. I was so stupid, so selfish, so wrong." I let her cry. Didn't offer tissues or comfort or any indication that I cared about her pain. When she finally composed herself enough to speak again, she looked at me with desperate hope. "I don't have anyone else. My parents kicked me out when they found out I was pregnant. All our mutual friends took your side, which I deserved. I lost my job because I couldn't stop crying at work. I'm broke. I'm alone.
I'm terrified.
And you're the only person who might possibly understand what it's like to be abandoned by Marcus." She reached across the table like she was going to grab my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. "Please, Olivia. Please. I need help. I need somewhere to stay. I need someone who understands. I need my best friend back." The audacity. The absolute audacity of this woman to betray me in the most intimate way possible and then show up 7 months later expecting me to save her from the consequences of her own choices. The old Olivia would have caved, would have felt guilty for her pain, would have helped despite the hurt because that's what good people do, right? They forgive, they help, they rise above. But I wasn't the old Olivia anymore. I was someone new, Someone who understood that forgiveness doesn't mean allowing toxic people back into your life. That compassion for yourself is more important than compassion for people who destroyed you. That some bridges should stay burned. I finished my coffee, closed my laptop, packed up my things slowly and deliberately while Rachel watched with growing panic. Then I stood up, looked down at this woman who used to mean everything to me, and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a friendly smile, a cold, satisfied, utterly final smile. Rachel, I said calmly, 7 months ago, you betrayed me with my boyfriend. You lied to my face. You snuck around behind my back. You did everything possible to destroy the trust we'd built over 20 years of friendship. And now you're sitting here, pregnant and abandoned, asking me for help because you have nowhere else to turn. I leaned down slightly, so we were eye level. Here's what I need you to understand. The woman you betrayed doesn't exist anymore. She died the night I saw that photo. The woman standing in front of you now is someone who learned that loyalty is a gift, not an obligation. That forgiveness is earned, not demanded. That just because someone is suffering doesn't mean I'm required to save them. Rachel's face went white. Olivia, please. I held up one hand. You made your choices. You chose Marcus over our friendship. You chose lies over honesty. You chose temporary pleasure over permanent trust. And now you're facing the consequences of those choices. That's not my fault. That's not my responsibility. That's life teaching you what happens when you betray people who loved you. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Rachel stood up, nearly knocking over her chair. You're really just going to leave? After everything we were to each other? After 20 years. I turned back one last time. You left first, Rachel. You left the moment you touched Marcus. You left when you lied about being sick. You left every single time you looked me in the eye and pretended to be my friend while sleeping with my boyfriend. I'm not leaving. I'm just finally matching your energy. Tears were pouring down her face. I'm pregnant and alone. I have nothing. Nobody. How can you be so cruel? And that's when I delivered the line I'd been unconsciously preparing for 7 months. The line that perfectly captured everything I'd learned about betrayal and healing and the difference between revenge and self-respect. Now you know exactly how you made me feel. Now you understand what it's like to be abandoned by someone you trusted. Now you're experiencing the same pain you caused without a second thought. The difference is, I didn't deserve what you did to me. You deserve every single consequence of what you did. Before anyone leaves a comment or thinks I need to reconsider, let me tell you something that's going to make you see this whole situation differently. Drop a comment below telling me if you think I was too harsh or if Rachel got exactly what she deserved. I genuinely want to know your perspective because what happened after that moment changed everything I thought I understood about justice and karma. I walked out of that coffee shop and got into my car, drove to my beautiful apartment that I'd earned with my own hard work and determination. Made myself dinner in my kitchen that no one else had claimed to. Slept in my bed that only I had ever occupied. And for the first time since the betrayal, I felt completely at peace. Not because Rachel was suffering. Not because Marcus had abandoned her. Not because karma had delivered justice faster and more precisely than I ever could have orchestrated. But because I'd finally, fully let them go. The next morning, I woke up and realized something profound. The old Olivia would have helped Rachel despite everything, would have let her stay in the spare room, would have supported her through the pregnancy, would have convinced herself that being the bigger person meant sacrificing her own boundaries and well-being. And that Olivia would have been miserable, resentful, trapped in a cycle of helping someone who would never truly appreciate the gift she was giving. The new Olivia understood that being the bigger person doesn't mean being a doormat. It means having strong enough boundaries to protect your peace even when someone else's suffering tries to guilt you into abandoning those boundaries. It means understanding that you can acknowledge someone's pain without being responsible for fixing it. It means knowing that the cruelest thing you can do sometimes is exactly nothing. I never saw Rachel again after that day. I heard through mutual friends that she had the baby, a girl, that she moved back to her hometown and lived with a distant aunt who took pity on her. That she worked 2 jobs to support herself and her daughter. That Marcus never came back, never paid child support, never acknowledged his daughter's existence. Part of me felt bad for the innocent child born into that situation. But that child wasn't my responsibility. Rachel's choices weren't my burden to carry. And the life she'd built from the ashes of our destroyed friendship wasn't something I needed to be part of. As for Marcus, I heard even less about him. Someone told me he'd moved to another state, started dating someone new, was pretending his entire relationship with Rachel, the pregnancy, all of it had never happened. Classic Marcus. Running from consequences. Rewriting history to make himself the victim instead of the villain. And me? I kept building. Kept growing. Kept becoming more of who I was always meant to be before I'd shrunk myself to fit into their expectations. I got promoted again 8 months after that coffee shop encounter. Director of Marketing. 6-figure salary. My own office with a view of the city skyline. I started dating again, but differently than before. I didn't look for someone to complete me or validate me or make me feel worthy. I looked for someone who matched the energy I'd worked so hard to cultivate. Someone who valued loyalty because they understood how rare it was. Someone who treated me with the respect I now demanded rather than the crumbs I used to accept. His name was James, a software engineer I met at a professional networking event. He was kind without being weak, confident without being arrogant, honest in a way that felt revolutionary after years of living with Marcus's lies. When I told him about Rachel and Marcus, expecting judgment or concern that I was damaged goods, he just held my hand and said something I'll never forget. The fact that you survived betrayal like that and came out stronger instead of bitter tells me everything I need to know about who you are. You're not defined by what they did to you. You're defined by what you did with the pain they caused. That's when I knew I'd fully healed. When I could tell the story without crying, without anger, without that hollow feeling in my chest that used to appear whenever I thought about them. They'd become nothing. Less than nothing. Just people who used to be in my life before I upgraded to something better. 1.5 years after the coffee shop encounter, I was at a company party celebrating our biggest campaign success ever. I was wearing a designer dress that I'd bought with my own money. My hair had grown out slightly, but I kept the darker color because I loved who it represented. I was standing with James, laughing with colleagues who respected me, when someone approached our group. It was Derek, the coworker whose Instagram story had accidentally revealed the betrayal that changed my life. He recognized me immediately. "Olivia? Oh my God, I almost didn't recognize you. You look amazing. Like, completely different. What's your secret?" I smiled. A real smile this time. I stopped wasting energy on people who didn't deserve me. He laughed, thinking I was joking. "That's a good one. Hey, I don't know if you heard, but Marcus moved back to town recently. He's been asking about you, actually. Wondering if you'd be willing to talk to him." The old Olivia's heart would have skipped a beat. Would have felt that familiar pull towards someone who never deserved her in the first place. Would have wondered if maybe enough time had passed for reconciliation or closure, or whatever lie we tell ourselves to justify reopening wounds that have finally healed. The new Olivia felt absolutely nothing. I have nothing to say to Marcus. But if you see him, you can tell him I'm doing better than I ever did when he was in my life. And that's all he needs to know. Derek looked uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, he seems pretty rough, actually. I think things didn't work out with that girl he was seeing. The one from the party where... He trailed off, realizing he was the one who'd accidentally exposed their affair. Where he betrayed me with my best friend. I finished for him. It's okay, Derek. You can say it. That party ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it showed me who people really were before I wasted any more of my life on them. James squeezed my hand, proud and protective and present in all the ways Marcus had never been. "We should go mingle," he said gently, giving me an out from this conversation. As we walked away, I heard Derek call after me. "For what it's worth, Olivia, everyone knows Marcus was an idiot for letting you go. You're like the one that got away story he tells at bars to make people feel sorry for him." I turned back. I'm not the one that got away. I'm the one who walked away. There's a difference. He didn't lose me. I freed myself. And that's a story he'll be telling for the rest of his life, while I'm too busy living mine to remember his name. That night, lying in bed next to James, I thought about Rachel crying in that coffee shop.
Pregnant.
Abandoned.
Desperate.
And I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Not for her suffering, but for her betrayal. Because if she hadn't betrayed me, I never would have been forced to rebuild myself. I never would have discovered how strong I actually was. I never would have learned that the worst thing that happens to you can become the catalyst for the best version of yourself. If Rachel had been a good friend, if Marcus had been a good boyfriend, I would have stayed comfortable, stayed small, stayed the version of myself that accepted less than I deserved because I didn't know I deserved better. Their betrayal broke me open in a way that allowed light to finally get in. It destroyed the naive girl who trusted blindly and believed loyalty was guaranteed if you just loved people hard enough. But from those ashes rose someone who understood that loyalty is precious because it's rare. That trust is a gift you give to people who've earned it. That love isn't about sacrificing yourself on the altar of someone else's comfort. 3 years after that photo destroyed my life, I received a message request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it without opening, but something made me click. It was from Rachel. The message was long and rambling, clearly written during some kind of emotional breakdown. She talked about her daughter, about how hard single motherhood was, about how she thought of me often, about how she understood now, truly understood, what she'd taken from me, about how she'd spent 3 years trying to be the kind of person worthy of my forgiveness. About how she didn't expect me to respond but needed me to know that betraying me was the biggest regret of her entire life. I read it once. Then I deleted it without responding. Because closure isn't something other people give you. It's something you give yourself by deciding that some chapters are finished whether or not everyone got to say their final words. Rachel needed to apologize to feel better about what she'd done. I didn't need to accept that apology to move forward with my life. Her guilt wasn't my responsibility to absolve. Her growth wasn't my job to witness. Her redemption arc wasn't my story to be part of. She'd written herself out of my life the moment she chose Marcus over our friendship. And 3 years later, I built something so beautiful from the rubble she'd left behind that I had no interest in revisiting the demolition site. That's the real revenge. Not making them suffer. Not watching karma destroy them. Not getting to deliver some perfect cutting line that makes them realize what they lost. The real revenge is building a life so fulfilling, so joyful, so completely yours that the people who betrayed you become irrelevant. They become background characters in a story where you're the hero who saved herself. For years after the betrayal, James proposed. In my apartment with the floor-to-ceiling windows that I'd earned with my own determination. With a ring he'd designed himself because he knew I didn't want something traditional. With words that honored who I was, not who he wanted me to be.
I said yes.
Not because I needed to be married to feel complete. Not because I was trying to prove something to Marcus or Rachel or anyone else. But because I'd found someone who matched the energy I'd worked so hard to cultivate. Someone who saw my strength not as intimidating but as inspiring. Someone who understood that the woman who survived betrayal and became stronger wasn't damaged goods. She was a warrior who knew her worth. The wedding was small, intimate, just people who'd proven their loyalty over time rather than demanded it be given freely. My sister was my maid of honor, the position Rachel had assumed would always be hers. During my vows, I said something that made everyone cry, though they didn't know the full context. I used to think love meant staying no matter what, forgiving no matter what, sacrificing no matter what. But I learned that real love, the kind that actually sustains you, requires boundaries, requires reciprocity, requires both people choosing each other every single day. James, you've shown me what it means to be loved by someone who sees me completely and still chooses me. Someone who values my loyalty because he understands how hard I fought to protect it. Someone who knows my story and loves me not despite my scars, but because of what those scars represent. The strength to walk away from what doesn't serve me. The courage to rebuild after destruction. The wisdom to know my worth. After the ceremony, during the reception, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was Marcus. I don't know how he'd gotten my new number. Don't know how he'd found out about the wedding. But his message was painfully predictable. Congratulations, Olivia. I saw the photos online. You look happy. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. You always deserved better. I hope he treats you the way I should have. I showed the message to James, expecting him to be angry or territorial. Instead, he just laughed. Let me guess. He saw you moved on and suddenly wants to rewrite history where he's the repentant ex instead of the cheating coward. I smiled, deleted the message, and blocked the number. He can rewrite history all he wants. I'm too busy writing my future to care about his edits to the past. That night, dancing with my husband in a room full of people who actually loved me, I realized something profound. Rachel and Marcus had given me the greatest gift anyone could give, though they'd never intended to. They'd shown me who I was capable of becoming when I stopped shrinking myself to fit into their limited vision of who I should be. They'd forced me to discover my own strength when comfort would have kept me weak. They'd proven that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are actually angels in disguise, pushing you toward the life you were always meant to live. So here I am, 5 years after that photo. 5 years after the party I wasn't invited to. 5 years after discovering that my best friend and my boyfriend were betraying me together. I'm successful. I'm happy. I'm married to someone who treats me like the prize I am. I have friends who've proven their loyalty through action rather than just words. I have a career I'm proud of. A life I'm excited about. A future that looks nothing like the one I'd planned with Marcus and Rachel. And you know what? That future is better than anything I could have imagined back when I was the naive girl who thought love and friendship were guaranteed if you just tried hard enough. The plot twist isn't that Rachel ended up alone and struggling. It isn't that Marcus became the kind of guy who abandons pregnant women. It isn't even that I found someone better and built a successful life. The real plot twist is that none of that matters. Their suffering doesn't make me happy. Their struggles don't validate me. Their karma doesn't complete me. What makes me happy is knowing that I had the strength to walk away silently, to rebuild without revenge, to let their consequences be their teachers instead of making it my job to punish them. What validates me is looking in the mirror and recognizing the woman staring back. Someone who knows her worth, who protects her peace, who understands that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation and healing doesn't require closure from the people who hurt you. What completes me is the life I built brick by brick after they burned down everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. A life where I'm the architect instead of waiting for someone else to build me a home. That's my revenge. That's my victory. That's my happy ending that isn't really an ending at all, but a beginning. The beginning of a life where betrayal was the breaking point that became the breakthrough. Where the worst thing that ever happened to me catalyzed the best version of myself. My name is Olivia Monroe. My best friend slept with my boyfriend, and I found out through someone else's Instagram story. And instead of creating drama or demanding explanations or trying to win him back or save the friendship, I did something they never expected. I disappeared. I healed. I grew. I built. I became. And by the time they realized I was gone, I was so far ahead they could never have caught up even if I'd wanted them to. Rachel got her karma when Marcus abandoned her pregnant and alone. Marcus got his karma when he realized that the woman he'd taken for granted had become someone far beyond his reach. But I didn't need their karma to feel satisfied, because my satisfaction came from within, from knowing that I chose myself when no one else would. From proving that the girl they thought was too soft to walk away was actually strong enough to build an empire from the ashes of their betrayal. So to anyone watching this who's been betrayed by someone they trusted, who's questioning whether they should forgive or give second chances, or try to understand why someone hurt them, here's what I learned. You don't owe forgiveness to people who aren't sorry. You don't owe explanations to people who knew exactly what they were doing. You don't owe your presence to people who proved they didn't value it. What you owe yourself is protection.
Peace.
The courage to walk away even when every part of you wants to stay and fight and fix and forgive. Because the truth is, some people aren't meant to be in your life forever. Some people are only there to teach you what you deserve by showing you what you don't. And once you've learned that lesson, once you've really internalized it, you don't need revenge. You don't need apologies. You don't need closure. You just need to keep walking forward into the life they'll never be part of. That's the real happy ending. Not them suffering, but you thriving. Not them regretting, but you healing. Not them begging for another chance, but you being so far beyond them that even if they caught up, you wouldn't turn around. Because you're too busy looking ahead at everything you're becoming, everything they'll never see, everything they lost when they chose betrayal over loyalty. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all. Living so well that the people who tried to break you become irrelevant. Building so high that the people who doubted you can't even see the top. Becoming so completely yourself that the version of you they knew and mistreated becomes a ghost of someone who no longer exists. That's my story. The friend who destroyed me ended up destroying herself. The boyfriend who betrayed me ended up alone. And the girl they both underestimated became the woman who proved that sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Welcome to my resurrection. And thank you for watching it unfold.